Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Welcome and thank you for attending. I'm Councilmember Nadeau, representing Ward 1, and I'm so glad to have you all here tonight. I want to take a moment to thank DC Housing Finance Agency for hosting us tonight in this wonderful space that they make available for community meetings. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge our elected advisory neighborhood commissioners. There's a number of them here tonight. If you'd like, please stand so we can acknowledge you and your leadership and service. Thank you. These are your volunteer elected leaders, which means they do not get paid to work as hard as they do for us. I also see that our 3rd District CAC rep, Karen Gall, is here with us tonight. Thank you, Karen, for being here. Our colleague in the Office of the Attorney General is here tonight. Thank you so much. Right into the mic. Okay. I don't have to tell me twice. Okay, and then we also have Ms. Carolyn Matthews, our Ward 1 Senior Advisory Council representative. So thank you for your service, Ms. Matthews. Chief Smith, thank you very much for accepting my invitation. So we've been joined on the dais by Chief Smith and also Chief Kane. Thank you both for being here. Chief Smith, you've been in the role since the summer and officially just this month when the council confirmed your appointment. This is a great opportunity to hear from you, hear your vision, ask questions as a community, and I'm going to play a small role tonight. This is a chance to speak with the chief. You all know that I am accessible through my coffee walks, Brienne on your block, many community meetings, and MPD public safety walks, and tonight's your chance to talk to the chief directly. That said, there's a few thoughts for me to frame our conversation. So you've probably heard me talk about the fact that I'm raising my 2 little ones here in Ward 1. My kiddos are 3 and 6, and that often frames the way that I think about issues. Public safety has been a top priority of mine since I took office, and I think that we all deserve to live in a community where we feel safe, and that all of our families need to be able to enjoy our public spaces and community amenities without fear. That's why I've been so concerned about the ongoing violence in the district and in our ward. I've taken a comprehensive approach to public safety with 3 areas of focus: prevention, policing, and prosecution. So what that means is that each year on the council, I've voted to approve a budget for MPD around $500 million. I've brought millions of dollars for violence prevention to neighborhoods like LaDroit Park, Columbia Heights, Parkview, and across Ward 1. And I've spent many years focusing on the root causes of crime and how to prevent it with programs and services that support.
The chief's mic seems to be louder.
Oh, okay.
You can hear me.
Or is it better if I just, is that better?
I would just the mic in the middle.
Okay.
Use that one.
Okay, that one's better?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Chief. Okay, I'll try to speak up also. So I've focused a long time on the root causes of crime and how to prevent it with programs and services that support people who are struggling with mental health and substance use disorder issues and homelessness, and children and adults at risk of falling into illegal activities. So those would be programs like the Community Navigators at Columbia Heights Plaza, or Safety Ambassadors in Adams Morgan, and violence prevention programs across the board. My budget work has focused on funding all 3 of those and other programs throughout the ward in this year's budget. And when it comes to the second and third part of my comprehensive approach, policing and prosecution, I also work closely with our 3rd District and 4th District commanders, both of whom are here tonight, Commanders Bodler and Lavenhouse. Thank you. By the way, we've also been joined by the 2nd District commander tonight as a guest. Commander Savoy, thank you for being here as well. And when I work with our commanders, it's a conversation about how do we prioritize resources and how do we get the resources we need in the wards so that they can do their jobs. Today, I announced 2 bills that I'm introducing this week. One would help police solve more homicide cases by boosting reward amounts for information leading to arrests and providing witnesses with protection, relocation, and assistance. My other bill would transfer fire and emergency medical 911 calls to the fire and emergency medical staff which will improve speed and effectiveness of emergency calls, and it'll free up 911 dispatch centers as staff focused on directing police to crime scenes where they're urgently needed. This builds on a bill I introduced earlier this year, the Cadet Act, which focuses on recruitment and retention of locally hired police to help us with our issue of hiring that we have right now. So I asked Chief Smith to come speak with Ward 1 residents because we are in an all hands on deck moment. We all in government need to be working together and be on the same page. And I want Ward 1 residents to be able to hear directly from her about her plans to address crime. And what I've heard from her so far tells me she will be thoughtful and deliberative. And I know she wants officers out of their cars, which is something you all tell me all the time you want to see. Walking the block and speaking with residents and businesses. I've been delighted since she took over how many walks I've been invited to in the ward and have had a chance to participate in. And I know she wants officers to be out talking to residents and businesses, and she's looking at how resources can best be allocated around the district. So I'm going to turn to her and give her this opportunity to share her vision, and then we'll turn to questions, and I'll get some logistics out after the chief speaks, so you know how the rest of the night will go. Chief, thank you.
Thank you so much, and forgive me if my voice goes out a little bit. We just came from a community walk up at Starburst Plaza, and as you know, it's like 30-something degrees outside. But it was important for us to be present for Kathy Henderson, who requested us to come out and to really take a look at some of the issues that were happening around Starburst Plaza, specifically in the CVS, as well as the Safeway in that area. And it was a really good opportunity for me to meet some of the residents that are in that that live in that area as well, and some of our DC government entities that also came out. I am Pamela Smith, the Chief of Police of the Metropolitan Police Department. It is certainly a pleasure for me to be here tonight. I am thankful for Councilmember Nadeau for offering me the opportunity. I think we tried to get this on the calendar before, but my schedule was so packed and I committed to doing it tonight. To my left is Assistant Chief Morgan Kane, who has been a member of the Metropolitan Police Department for over 25, coming up on 25 years, and it's certainly a pleasure to have her here. She has certainly been a staple in our Patrol Services North Bureau, certainly knows the intricate details of what goes on, specifically in Ward 1. And we're also joined by Commander Boatler, who is our 3rd District Commander. And I know Councilmember Nadeau introduced them, but I'd like to take the pleasure of introducing my team as well. Commander Lavenhouse, who is our 4th District Commander. And again, Commander Savoy, who is our 2nd District Commander. I'm also joined by Lieutenant, gosh, I always forget her name and she's my XO. I know who it is, I'm just playing. Lieutenant Gaines, who's my executive officer in the chief's office, and we're also joined by Director Cynthia Puryear, who is our Director of Communications. And I miss anybody from the Metropolitan Police Department besides Sergeant Wagner, who is also in my office, and Ken Chandler, who is with our policy strategic change office as well. Anyone else I missed? Thank you so much for being here. So, and they are strong supporters in this work here in Ward 1. You know, having been in this space since July 17th, I certainly want to give honor and respect to Mayor Muriel Bowser, who thought it not robbery, if you will, to appoint me to this position. And it's been I will tell you, a fast-paced race, if you will, to be where we are today. Clearly, there are concerns with regards to crime trends and how crime has significantly increased from March of 2023. We saw a significant increase in March all the way up into July. And I will tell you, it is coming down. Our team is working very diligently. It doesn't feel like it, but we're taking it in 30-day bites. And when I say 30-day bites, to really be effective and impactful in spaces and places where we really need to drive crime down. when you talk about my vision, what is my vision? It's kind of a four-part vision. It's prevention, which I think Councilmember Nadeau has talked about, and we certainly want to be in a space where we are preventing some of these criminal acts, violent as well as property crimes from occurring. How do we do that? Well, certainly it's more than a Metropolitan Police Department effort. We are joined on a regular basis by a lot of our DC government agencies to support us in this space of prevention. When I think about Department of Behavioral Health, we think about CSOSA, the DDOT, EPW, our Deputy Mayor of Public Safety and Justice, who has a large contingency of directors under her leadership, such as DYRS, WANS, and other agencies that are there to really support us in this work that we're trying to do to prevent and drive down crime. We also have a very close relationship with our U.S. Attorney's Office as well as our Attorney General's Office, and we will continue in those efforts to look at the prevention piece. When I think about prevention, there are some concerns that we have about our youth, right? We've seen this significant increase in criminal behavior from our young people, and it has been very troubling for me. We have been very intentional about meeting with our DYRS entities. If you noticed earlier during this summer, we introduced an opportunity for us to kind of partner with DYRS to ensure that we are getting these young people off the street, and not something that we have not already been doing, but giving them an opportunity to be picked up after the curfew hours and then transferred to a facility so that they can be joined by their parents and then services provided for them. I want to make sure that I'm clear about the fact that this does not negate the fact that when young people are engaged in criminal behavior, we will do what we have to do as a law enforcement agency to prevent them from remaining remaining in that space and place where that crime has been committed. There are other avenues beyond that, right? We've made significant strides, I will say, within the department as it relates to arresting juveniles, but that's not enough, right? There has to be an accountability piece from the prevention side of the house, whether it's with the parents, whether it's with the system that we're working with. And then once they are arrested, there is a space in place where we are really working very closely with the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Attorney General Office to really look at how we will keep some of these young people detained. And that's been really, really a critical spot, a critical piece where I know the community is very concerned about how a lot of these young people are out on the street. And we're working closely to try to really come up with a good alternative or plan. But I need you as a community to also think about what we can do in that space to also support some of our young people. Some of these crimes that they're committing certainly are crimes of opportunity. It incites fear. It is just disturbing to me. I am probably one of the biggest advocates for young people, just based on how I grew up, what my lifestyle was like as a young person, and knowing that someone took a chance on me. So I know that there are things that we can do to be impactful in that space, but we've got to have an ecosystem that can come together and sit down and talk about what we can do to really work with and help our young people. The concern that I have is that, I'm getting older, as some of you are in this room. And these young people are supposed to be our future. I don't want my future to look like what I'm seeing today. And that's the reason why it's really important for us to play a critical role in determining how we will address our young people. Then there's the intervention piece, right? When we talk about my goals, it's prevention, sustainability, intervention, and I talked a little bit about accountability. When we talk about the intervention piece, again, that's a key factor when we're talking about young people, but also intervention where we look at some of our mental health consumers that are out and about across the District of Columbia, unsheltered individuals that are also, we're finding now, that are also caught up in this web, if you will, of crime, and finding ways to really align ourselves with the Department of Behavioral Health and Dr. Bazran and her team in ensuring that when we do conduct our public safety walks or our community walks, that we have social services entities engaged in that space so that we can not only look at dealing with the criminal element, but what other services do some of these people need that are out here in the District of Columbia. And then obviously the sustainability. It's one thing to be impactful in a space or a place, but how do we sustain it? How do we, as we talk about driving crime down, how do we sustain that in that space and place? And again, that's an all of government approach that I think we all need to take and when I say we all, as far as DC government agencies, really take an impactful look at how the crime trends and patterns that we need to do in order to drive crime down. One of the things that we have introduced, I will say to the city council, the mayor, Mayor Bowser and Deputy Mayor Lindsay Appiah, we have introduced legislation specifically related to addressing crime trends now, which is considered Act Now. There are significant pieces in that legislation that we would like to see passed in order to support us in this effort of fighting crime. One in particular are the anti-mask law. When we think about the crime that is taking place, our officers really need the tools in order to address or approach these young people or young adults who are walking around in full ski masks, committing these crimes. It's unacceptable. I have myself witnessed 4 young people in a car, full mask, pulled up beside them. Was unable to get out and say anything, obviously, because I didn't have enough what we would call probable cause or reasonable articulable suspicion to engage. But this legislation will give our officers to be able to do that. I knew they were up to no good. Why? Because 4 people in July sitting in a car with 4 masks on, kind of cornered along the roadway. I thought that there was something wrong because I'm still a cop first. Don't get it twisted. So obviously the police in me kicked in, and I leaned over and I looked inside the vehicle, and immediately they took off, right? And so we need to be able to have an opportunity to give our officers enough investigative tools in order to address these kinds of crimes with the anti-mask. The organized retail theft, like this is crazy. Like we have folks that are just going in the stores and just wiping the shelves off. And it's a 2-part problem, right? There are folks who are going in and stealing because it's crime of opportunities. And then we have other folks who are directing these young people to go in and steal things. And so this legislation will give us, again, an opportunity to allow our officers to effect arrests in these spaces and places where there have been directed retail theft or there have been organized retail theft where an individual may go into an establishment and steal up to an aggregate value of over $250 or have committed 10 or more items that kind of total up to $250. And we're able at that time with this legislation to be able to effect an arrest. And it's an investigative tool, right? Because what we want to be able to do is to get to the folks who are directing these people to do this kind of criminal activity. And we're also looking at with the, excuse me, I've been outside. With the Act Now legislation is to give me, the chief of police or designee, the opportunity to declare drug-free zones. We have heard over and over and over in many community walks that I've attended where community members are sick and tired of being sick and tired of open-air drug markets where people are congregating on the corners. And Again, congregating on the corners. Listen, there is a no loitering law in DC. We don't have a no loitering law. We don't have a no vending law, right? And so this opportunity will give me as the chief of police the opportunity to declare a particular space up to 1,000 feet, to declare that as a drug-free zone. I want to make sure we're clear on this. This is not a new law. This is a law that was already in place before. We're just asking this law to be reestablished. It is very sad when members of the community who purchase homes and can't have the opportunity to beautify a particular area because folks are just sitting around with chairs and tables and all kinds of things. We need to clean up those places and get our blocks back. And we will stand with you to do that. It's not an opportunity for us to go through and arrest a bunch of folks. That's not the intent. The intent is to give you the opportunity to get your neighborhood back and public spaces in your neighborhood back so that you can beautify those places. And I'll say this, and I know it's not in this district, but that wall on Minnesota Avenue driving me nuts. I tell you, it is one of the thorns in my flesh. I have one flesh. It drives me nuts, right? And again, we can't do much about it. I mean, clearly, we have the authority, and we always will have the authority to make arrests for narcotics in narcotics incidents that we see occurring in front of us. What I will say is that to date, we have arrested 759 individuals in 2023 for narcotics arrests. And that's a lot for 1 year. And I think I heard someone say that only our Violent Crime Suppression Division are the only group of individuals that affect arrest. Every member of the Metropolitan Police Department has the authority to effect arrest for narcotics based on the legal limit, right? In a particular space, especially public spaces. We give them that. They have the authority to do that, and we will continue to encourage them to do that in those public spaces. And again, giving us approximately 5 days to declare that area a drug-free zone. This is not to, and I heard someone say, and I'm just pushing it out there, to target anyone. This is not about race. This is not about demographics. This is not about ethnicity. This is about conduct and behavior, and doing what we need to, having the ability to drive that behavior out of that neighborhood. And we will continue to do that if this legislation is passed. And I'll pause. I think I've said a lot. I'll pause for a few moments just to see if Chief Kane would like to add anything, and then we'll, if Councilmember Nadeau wants to open it up for questions, we can do that.
So I think the chief said it all. But what I will say is that the team that you see before you, and a lot of faces out here I know and I talk to, we will remain steadfast in working our very best and in driving the team here at MPD to continue to fight this violent crime, to continue to apprehend juveniles, adults, whoever that looks like, that's out here committing crime. To that point, we just had a case over in 5D. When we talk about robberies, because we're fighting robberies and we're fighting shootings, when we talk about robberies, we just had a case over in 5D where the patrol officers, being where we want them to be, being where we need them to be, where crime is being committed, apprehended a robbery suspect that is probably involved in no less than 25 cases. They are working it right now to piece all of the cases together, but the diligence of your patrol officers is what will bring those cases to closure and bring some justice to those victims. So I echo everything that the chief said, but I want you to remain, have a huge understanding that we are committed to this. We're in challenging times. As the chief said, over the last 30 days, and particularly since July, with some of the initiatives that we put in play, some of the initiatives that really are focused in this area as well. We will continue to do the work, even when you're sleeping and you don't see us. We will continue to do the work, but we want to continue to partner with you. We need you to share information. We need you to be advocates for what it is that the men and women of our agency need. And again, we need to stay in close communication, and we're committed to doing that with you and for you.
Well, thank you both very much. And I'm glad that, Chief, that you brought up the Act Now bill, because council's having a hearing on it tomorrow,
Yes.
right? And I look forward to participating. Yes, I know, we've blocked our schedules. And your team and I had a good conversation about it a couple weeks ago. So I look forward to hearing the testimony tomorrow as well. Okay. So we are, we're going to do the Q&A portion now. We have about an hour, and you have on your seat a postcard with the QR code, or you can use the URL on it to submit your questions. We also have a number of folks who submitted them in advance, and that allows us to organize them into topics so we can get to more questions. We've done this a few times, trust me, we get a lot more answered doing it this way. And if you need to if you would like to prefer to write on a note card and have someone pick it up, just raise your hand if you have a question. All right, and my staff will come pick up your note card. Okay. not to confuse my staff, but I'm also going to ask you to raise your hand if you have an empty seat near you where you could welcome another neighbor to come sit, because I see we do have some people who are standing. If they wish to do so, they can move in to those seats. Okay. So I'm going to guide the conversation, but the questions are coming from you all. And if we don't get to all the questions, feel free to stay afterwards to chat with me and my team, and we'll follow up. All right, so we are going to do a few general topic areas. The first is Chief's goals and areas of focus. The second is methods of policing and any expected changes under her tenure. The third is the distribution of officers and resources. And then the fourth is working with other agencies like the Nightlife Task Force, Department of Behavioral Health, DDOT, and others. Okay, and if we heard you answer a question that we thought we were going to ask, we will skip it. Okay, all right. So I thought it would be good to ask you to lay out your vision for MPD, what you hope to achieve and how you'll get there. Not surprisingly, we've had a number of questions and comments come in. One person said they're scared when they walk out of their house. Another's worried that crimes seem to be more frequently occurring during the daytime on busy streets. And another feels that quality of life crimes like traffic violations, littering, and public intoxication are not being addressed. And I'm sure you've heard similar. With that in mind, what are your goals and vision for policing in the district? Are there areas of focus for you? And do you have plans to do things differently than how they've been done in the past?
No, thank you for those questions. And I think I kind of laid out my 4 areas of vision when I talked about prevention, intervention, sustainability, and accountability. Those are the 4 areas that I will focus on as the chief of police. And I think I kind of laid that out a few moments ago. When we talk about the different types of crime that's happening during the daytime, and this is something that I've been looking at as it relates to our data. And as you know, when we are determining where we will assign our resources throughout a given day, the commanders will make a decision as to what the type of crime that's happening every single day. And then they will make that decision as to how they will assign their officers in a particular PSA and or sector. And we give them the authority to do that. And one of the things that I've tasked the team with is really paying attention to the theft from autos, a crime that's happening during the daytime, the theft from autos, as well as motor vehicle thefts. We've seen an increase. We saw an increase of that a couple of months ago. And having our officers be intentional about getting out of the cars, walking around in the neighborhoods, when they see cars that are double parked, right? Ushering those folks on and getting them out of that mindset of being double parked. And oftentimes when we see cars that are double parked, some of those folks are up to no good. But getting our officers engaged and being police officers again. What does that look like? What does that mean? Well, I'm glad you asked. There was a period, and I've been in law enforcement for 25 years. And I remember right after the George Floyd riots and how impactful that was to all of us as law enforcement officers, when there were conversations about defunding the police and not giving us the opportunity to do the things, because George Floyd didn't take place here in the District of Columbia. It took place in Minneapolis. And I'm going to say that and put that out there because I can say it, being a law enforcement person in that space during that time. The challenge has been, I think officers have felt like they could not be police officers. They could not get out there and really do. Ma'am, sir. Okay, hold on. Hold on. I'm going somewhere, Scott. I'm going somewhere. Yes, sir. I appreciate that. Thank you. But my predecessor, Robert J. Conti, and the team that's been here have been very, very intentional about getting officers back out there that feel like they can be police officers again. We have initiated so many new plans and new initiatives. Our robbery suppression and carjacking task force initiative. We stood that up back in July. We also have the nightlife task force force where all of our DC government entities are engaged in assisting us in driving crime along that U Street corridor and Georgia Avenue area in the third district. And that was stood up last year. I think was it June or July? June of last year. And we are continuing those efforts. And since I've been in that space, I've added additional resources. And what we've also done is that we're utilizing a violent crime suppression team a lot different than we've used them before in the past, to include our aviation. We're using every resource that we currently have right now to address crime across the District of Columbia. I didn't bring the data sheet with me tonight, but I will make sure that Councilmember Nadeau gets it, where she can see and you all can see that the crimes are coming down slowly but surely. It doesn't feel like it because we had a significant spike in June and July, but our officers are out there every single day. Even, will you be quiet? Even in the area, the 6th and 7th districts, where we're really challenged in some of those spaces, we have new initiatives that will be coming out relatively soon. As a matter of fact, I can't get ahead. Is it okay if I talk about this? I can talk about. Okay, so we are standing up a new initiative on Friday night. And this is when I talk about officers that want to do this work. We have over 20 or so officers who have volunteered to come in. I can't give you the tactics, but I'll say 7 days a week. I can't give you the time period. 7 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day, to do nothing but be mobile across the District of Columbia to fight crime. That's a new initiative. And these officers volunteered to, once I put the plan out there to say, hey, listen, crime is happening everywhere. I need to have a team that's going to move into those spaces and places where violent crime is happening. And we have officers today who want to be police officers, and I'm going to support them in that effort and encourage them to continue to do it. As a matter of fact, Friday night when they start, I will be there. Be there with them Friday night to ensure that we are doing what we need to do to drive crime down. And I can't be an effective leader to tell them what to do without being present in the space with them to let them know that I support them 1000%. And I'm confident that the drivers behind what we're doing in this space, you will see a significant decrease. The other piece of it is that we are partnering in a different perspective with ATF, DEA, FBI, and our U.S. Attorney's Office to also have additional resources, federal resources assigned to the District of Columbia, to the Metropolitan Police Department, to also help us in this fight with gun trafficking. With these guns that are coming from different places across the United States, here in the District of Columbia, we have all decided to partner. It was a discussion that we had a couple of weeks ago with the U.S. Attorney's Office to come together and add additional resources to support us in this fight for crime. So when you talk about the plan is really about, number one, looking at evidence-based crime that's happening across the District of Columbia, making sure that we are addressing crime in those areas, but more importantly, being confident that we have the support of our federal, state, and local partners to assist us in this space. As you know, we are down officers, right? We are down about almost 700 officers. And I'll tell you, it's very challenging to continue to ask our officers to do this work because it's a lot of overtime. I become concerned about their mental health and well-being, and I'm always encouraging folks to make sure you take some time, take your day off. And there are officers that will do this work 24/7 if we let them. But we have to be able to make sure that our officers are also safe doing this job. And so I will say to you, when you talk about what are we doing in this space, we are doing everything we can to help drive down crime. And I will also tell you that there are members of the community who are also right there with us. Members in the community who allow us to come into their homes. And I'll tell you about these camera rebates. Make sure you have the mayor's office, the camera rebate program. Please get yourself a camera. That has been significant in helping us close a lot of these cases. I know a lot of you heard on the news the other day about the young lady who had the dog. Mm-hmm. We were fortunate enough today, immediately began to work on helping her get her dog back. So she was able to get her dog back today. So I just want to tell you, our officers began working on that immediately. Because you know what I told them? I said, listen here, if y'all don't find that dog, my lieutenant, my sergeant and myself, we're going to 5th District and we're gonna find that little puppy. But they took it very seriously, as they do with everything, with every issue that comes their way. I mean, no one asked them to. They took it upon themselves to understand how important it is when people are impacted by crime. And that's all I have to say in that space. Morgan, would you like to add anything?
Oh, thank you.
I think in the space, I want to say, I say it and you will hear me say it. The chief alluded to what occurred in 2020 that really shifted how our officers kind of up. And so getting them back in the game, that has really been a big push from the chief right down to the executive command staff and to the management that we have on the street. And so at this point, what we're really doing is rebuilding their confidence back up, right? They were beat down just a little bit. So we're rebuilding their confidence back up. And the more that they see that they're supported, the more they see that we're out there with them, the more work that they're going to do. And sometimes we do have to send them home. And so in that space, I want to say, Jess, we talk about the robbery suppression initiative. We talk about the nightlife initiative. Again, I say that a large focus of that and concentration is right here in this area in PSA 305 in Ward 1. I'm going to say it. They've recovered, with the RSI, well over 200 guns, right? The robbery suppression initiative that we put up in July, over 200 guns. We have recovered over close to 200 stolen vehicles. We have affected the arrest of not only adults, but juveniles, and that is around the 200 mark as well. So the officers are working hard, will continue to do that. They're thoughtful, they're strategic, and we will continue to follow not only just the crime and the trends, but hearing what it is that's important to you all. Because you all will see something and ring the alarm. Sometimes before our stats will tell us that there might be an issue. So if you have your management officials, keep in touch. I will keep harping in on that. Keep in touch, make sure that we're communicating, make sure you are sharing information. You have seen us out on the walks, the safety walks that we came from, the management walks where we're doing the walk and talks. And I know in 3D, Commander Bowler, I will give him all due praise in that space. He has his folks, his team is out walking. So just make sure that we are he did. Yes, if you don't know, Commander Bowler, code and all, yesterday ran down a suspect that had a gun on him. Yes, absolutely. So I tell you from the top down, we're invested in this. What'd you want to say, Jimmy?
It started as a theft of auto, it's 1 minute.
Yeah.
Around my house, thank you, Brianne.
So to the chief's point, not only are we focused in on violent crime, we also understand that theft from autos and motor vehicle thefts are also driving the fear. And our teams are working in that space as well to reduce. And to your point, we've had significant reductions in violent crime over the last 30 days and we'll continue to push.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to write it down on the card and hold it up in the air and we will come get it from you. One question we received from a resident: are there any promising community safety strategies that are working in other wards that could potentially be used in Ward 1?
I think the ask for the team is that it is citywide. What we've discussed with you, listen, we cannot limit one aspect of how we're going to address crime in one area and not do it in the other, because what ends up happening is if it's happening over here in Ward 1, you can rest assured somebody in Ward 2 is thinking about a way to either the Ward 1 to Ward 2 to Ward 3 to Ward 4. So I made it very clear to the team in July that we have to have a citywide plan. Not a plan that's isolated to the east side of the river or the west side of the river, but a plan that is impactful across the city. And again, I will provide data to Councilmember Nadeau so that she will see where we have seen a significant downward trend. You asked about the property crimes. One of the things that when somebody said something about property crimes, I think it was, and I told the team a couple of weeks ago, we also, as we focus on violent crime, homicides, ADWs, robberies. We also have to focus on the property crimes because I think that is also an area where people begin to feel a lot of fear. Crimes that's happening in their area, crimes that are happening to them in specific places and spaces where they're going. We have to be able to really drive drive their thought process and be strategic about how we're going to do that. And what that means is that we have officers that are on mountain bikes, right? We have a CDU team, a civil disturbance unit. I want every single unit that's available and have resources out on the street. Most folks call it an all hands on deck. I said, every resource that you have in your district should be working to prevent crime.
Thank you. Another question from a resident. What are the social and other factors contributing to the recent uptick in violent crime? What about kids? Why are teenagers engaging in risk-taking behavior? And what are some preventative measures that you're working on for keeping children off the streets and away from these criminal activities like carjacking and retail theft?
So thank you for that question. I think I kind of alluded to how we have been addressing that. So I go back to the accountability piece, right? When we say things like folks can get away with crime in the District of Columbia, we open the door or Pandora's box to allow folks to think that they can do that here. Young people, I wish I had a magic wand to be able to say why, get into the thought process. I'm not a social worker anymore. So I don't have the necessary tools, but we're working with our social service agencies. We're working with URS. We're working with CFS to really find out what is happening with our young people. There are a lot of young people that are not enrolled in school. So DCPS is another entity that we're working with because for the amount of young people that we've had contact and communication with, to see that they're not even enrolled. Some of these young people that have been arrested, to see that they're not even enrolled in school, there's another entity that we really have to deal with. There's a truancy piece that we own at the Metropolitan Police Department, and you can rest assured that we are out there picking up young people off the street throughout the course of a day. But that's not enough. There has to be some accountability. And I said it before, accountability with the parents and making sure that these young people are going to school and making sure that they're not out on the streets during times and periods of hours where there are curfew laws, where they should be actually at home. And there's another piece to this that also pulls at my heartstrings. When we established the curfew pilot program, there was a young man about 14 years old. It was pouring down raining one night, and we picked him up the first night and took him to DYRS. The parent came and picked him up, and he went back home. The second night, he was back out on the street again, right? 14 years old. He was running away from home because there was trouble in the home. And so that's the other layer that I also want to make sure that we understand, that when some of these young people are out and about, there's also complications and issues in the household, which is why I say we have to have all of government approach to deal with some of those types of young people. I'm not talking about the folks that are robbing and stealing and killing, but there's another layer that we also have to be compassionate about when we have young people who are running away from home because of the circumstances that they live in. I've been there. I've been there as a young person growing up, and I know what that's like. That's why I'm so compassionate about making sure that we work very strongly with our child and family services programs to make sure that they are doing exactly what they need to do to help address some of the issues that are going on in some of the households. Again, when it comes to these young kids who are committing violent crimes, we have a job to do, and you can rest assured we're going to do it.
Thank you, Chief. Another question from a resident. What are your thoughts on why crime is going up in DC while it's down in other parts of the country? It's a tough one.
It is a tough one. It is, yeah. Yes. Why y'all laughing? Why is everybody snickering? I'm thinking, ma'am.
Tell us the truth.
Huh? Is that Scott again? Oh.
That is not just here in the city, it's for the whole country.
Not as bad as it is here, specifically not here.
It's going down on Friday.
So when we talk about, and I will say this, yes, there are crime trends and patterns in other areas across the country where it is going down. And then there are other areas where it is not. And I do believe that the type of crime that we're dealing with here in the District of Columbia is not specific to just DC, right? Crime has gone up. The responsibilities for our officers have also gone up, but we're working with lower numbers. So when you talk about why crime sometimes is not where we would like it to be, is because we're really working diligently to hire new officers, right? There was a time period, and I'm not sure when that was, maybe 2021, where we were not hiring officers, right? And that was impactful to law enforcement here in the District of Columbia, but not just in DC, but in other areas across the US. And so we are working very diligently to build those numbers back up. Are there other initiatives that we are focused on? Yes. I'm also looking at having another dialogue, if you will, with George Mason University to look at hotspots policing. We were really intimately involved with George Mason and Dr. Comer at one point, and I want to reintroduce the agency with that hotspots policing program because at one point when I look back at the data, it was very impactful. A lot of police agencies across the country use hotspots policing. They also focus on we had the Violent Crime Partnership Reduction Initiative. We looked at the data that seemed to be impactful. So there are a lot of things, a lot of initiatives that other agencies are able to do with more personnel that we are still struggling to reach that level. I will say over the last 3 classes, we've had the highest number of classes hired over the last 3 months than we've had all year. So we're moving in the right direction. Now, don't get it twisted. When it gets cold, folks don't like to come out and take, physical fitness tests in the months of December and January. But we're still coming up with other alternatives in order to ensure that we are recruiting some of the best individuals to come work for the Metropolitan Police Department.
I'm gonna follow up with that with just some things that I've been thinking about too, is you have a challenge with other agencies as well. For example, the crime lab hasn't been accredited for a couple of years. I know that hurts some of the cases you're trying to make. We've been having some challenges at OUC. I know you probably can't necessarily affirm this, but I definitely talk to officers who feel discouraged because of the way dispatch works over there, and they feel like they don't get the calls as quickly as they should. And of course, our partners in the feds, you mentioned the feds, but we have a really low prosecution rate in the district, which also can't be great for morale. I mean, do you think any of those things contribute to what's going on in DC that, maybe aren't happening in other parts of the country?
I don't know, and certainly I would never comment negatively about my counterparts. I think I work very, very closely with OUC Director Heather. And I also work very closely with Matt Graves when it comes to how you talk about prosecution of cases. I think he has been very supportive in this space since I've been here. I meet with him on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, I'm meeting with him on Thursday. Coming from a place where I came from a federal agency, the support from our federal partners could not be more stronger. And I'm not saying that because of me. Now, don't get it twisted. I've had to twist some arms and have some folks come over here to help support us because, in the communities that you come from, that's just the relationships that you have. You build those relationships, and when you call on folks, they will come and support you. We have ATF already embedded in spaces and places in the district here at the Metropolitan Police Department. And we are only going to...
I could have been killed. I could have been robbed. That's not my family. Not my family. You have, when you're a single woman in DC, you the police, you helping you or teaching you, they're standing up. They're not sitting on their butt.
What does that mean?
I mean, stand up. I mean, you gotta stand up for something or fall for anything because it's not gonna be me.
Okay.
It could have been me. You know, I'm not gonna be another number or whatever in some crime, whatever.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, not my family. I'm just saying.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that.
I'm sick and tired of it.
I hear you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, not mine. You have to speak up for yourself. You have to speak up for yourself.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
really do.
Yes, ma'am.
And it's sad because people just sit down and you stand up for everything else, but you won't stand up for just a little meeting with your community. It's pillars in the community. It's just because everything that happened with George Floyd, you got people that live here, billionaires, multimillionaires, that live wealthy people that live here that's not from here. And they fly every day. So I'm gonna stay fly. I don't care.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
not gonna fall into that.
Yes, ma'am. And if there's an opportunity for us to, partner, come over and do a walk, we would certainly do that.
I'm
Yes,
not
ma'am.
gonna be a victim and I'm a victor. I'm not a victim
Yes,
because, and I know that because God got
Yes, ma'am.
it. And,
Thank you for that.
every day, I'm not gonna be going to no therapy because something that happened to my goddamn family.
Mhm.
I'm trying to keep it as cordial as possible.
We'll follow up. Well, we're gonna stick around after and we'll get your contact info too. So thank you so much. So I'm gonna move to the second topic, which is methods of policing and plans changes to those. You've talked a bit about this since before you were confirmed about having your officers engage more in community, getting out of their cars, walking beats and engaging with residents and business owners. I've seen it, have been glad to join several weekly public safety walks in Ward 1. I read that you're also directing your team to be out in the community. I think sergeants and lieutenants as well. And yeah, and this, everybody, okay, this is welcome. This is
To include myself.
to include yourself. And we heard about the commander's heroics already. This is certainly welcome for me and many others I know. You've also talked about revisiting how officers and other resources like the special units are deployed in the district and within wards. So we have several questions about staffing and assigning resources. How do you or your commanders make staffing decisions? And how do you decide where to assign officers? For example, U Street on Friday or Saturday night needs a lot of presence. And how do you plan to address the staffing challenges MPD and other jurisdictions across the country are facing?
Well, thank you for that. I'll have Morgan answer that. Chief Kane.
So when we talk about staffing decisions, each patrol district is allocated personnel for the commander to make staffing decisions based on a couple of different things: crime trends, crime stats, feedback and communication from the community, right? I say it all the time. We are really very involved in the hour to hour status of what is happening in our respective areas. So for me, it's going to be 4 patrol districts that I am consistently and constantly watching. The commanders consistently and constantly watching what the state of that patrol district is. So what happens with that understanding, of course, it's broken down, and I'm just going to make it real basic for you all. It's broken down into patrol service areas and sectors. Based on the data, based on the feedback, based on what it is we're seeing, based on what the trends are, the commander then makes the decision in consultation with his team or her team on how they're going to staff what's called patrol service areas, right? We're a 24/7 operation. And so we talk about the resources that are allocated to the district, and then the commander makes the decision how many patrol officers will be assigned to each PSA, to each shift. And that may change based on the trends. He also has, or she also has, some special mission units, right? 4D has an auto theft unit. They all have crime suppression teams. We may have a burglary unit that the commanders may put together based on what the trends are telling them in the moment and what they're trying to prevent against. So they have the whole of the resources inside of their district to allocate to whatever crime trend they are trying to defeat. So I say it's not just the officers that you necessarily see in your patrol service area, but they have the ability to activate all of the officers assigned to the district and use them in the way that is most appropriate to fight or combat whatever it is that they need to happen. So I say that to say it's a daily watch. We're always pivoting and moving to move folks around the district as needed. So it's not just set in stone and that's all we have. They use overtime. The chief talked about how much overtime the officers are working to supplant us being down, the amount of officers that we're down. But that is something that the management team, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, are consistently watching and making deployment decisions and pivoting based on what we see in real time out on the street. Not only do they have their resources, though, they have the ability to call in other divisions as well. If special operations is working, the chief talked about activating every person in the agency that has a law enforcement power, basically a badge and gun. So that might mean the commander, his watch commander, calling over to the Violent Crime Suppression Division, saying, hey, do you have some folks you can send over? I have something emerging that I want to combat right now. Calling over the drug unit, whatever that looks like, that is something that is consistent and constant as we go through a 24-hour cycle. And it's one of the most important things that we do.
Can I ask a quick follow-up on that? What would be a fully staffed police force? You said you increased hiring, you've done all that. What's the number? Because like, we've heard that as the reason for a lot of this, why you can't solve a lot of this crime. So when you reach that number, that excuse sort of goes away. So what is that number?
So we've heard prior chiefs mention we have been as high as 4,200 police officers. I mean, and to be at 33, 39 is pretty low in comparison to what we have to face and deal with when it comes to new crime, because this is a different wave that we're going through than most. I've heard people say, and even some of the assistant chiefs say, you know, well, chief, this is different than what I've ever experienced in the 20-something years that I've been on the job. And so if I had a magic number, it would be about 4,200 police officers to really help us effectively do this work. I mean, because I have to also keep in mind that over the last 3 years, I think we've worked over 1 million hours of overtime per year. 1 million hours of overtime per year. I stand to be corrected. And that's a lot of hours. And so when I think about what we can do to do this job effectively, certainly having about 4,200 or so officers is would be helpful for us. But again, there are other entities that are also we have to look at when we talk about crime, right? It's not just the Metropolitan Police Department. There's a prevention piece, and then there's the accountability piece. Once these young men, young women, juveniles have been arrested, there has to be something on the other side of that. And I won't tell you what it is. You can figure it out for yourself. That's going to send a message to folks that this kind of violent behavior will not be tolerated.
Is the council member gonna support that 4,200?
So we've gotten some questions about,
4,200 officers?
Scott, you can write your questions down just like everybody else. We've gotten some, oh, thank you, that's helpful. We're not gonna have a shouting contest.
Answer the questions.
All right.
Yeah.
So we've got about 15 minutes left and there are some really good questions that have been submitted. So I'm gonna keep going.
You gonna support the chief?
There is,
You gonna support the chief?
I am supporting the chief. I do support the chief.
We want to know the answer.
Folks,
Now
We're-
in the police
Money
department.
where your mouth is.
okay, okay.
That's really what
So-
everyone is here for.
So I have, all right. Cool. So folks, as I said earlier, I have supported more than $500 million annually for MPD's budget. You guys, if you keep shouting, this is not what we're gonna do tonight. So I'm gonna answer your question, but you gotta stop shouting at me. Are we good?
what he thinks DC councils, if some of the legislation or policies of the DC council
We
are
have,
holding them back.
we have,
from the-
we have a number of questions that we're still trying to get through, okay? So right now, MPD is funded at the rate they can actually hire. The issue we have at the moment is not a budget issue, okay? No, it wasn't. We have given MPD each year the amount of money that they have had the ability to hire based on retirement, recruitment, and retention, okay? Period.
Is that true, Chief?
And we will continue to do so, okay? Okay. Okay, we will continue to do so, okay? So right now, we don't have a funding issue. We have a recruitment and retention issue. Chief's talked about that. I have told you about my bill to help with recruitment. And now we will go on to the next question. So we've gotten some questions about gun violence and residents have very serious concerns on this. What do you say to those who worry about gun violence on our streets? What are the most effective tools MPD has to address gun violence? And I'll just throw in a couple more, so because we are gonna have to wind down soon. What's the number of concealed carry firearm permits in the district? Has that gone up? And then how much do you think escalating violence is driving gun violence and or being caused by that? By the concealed carry firearm permits, I believe.
So I think last year we had over 12,000 concealed carry licenses that were issued. And actually this year the number has gone down. We're actually roughly around 200 or so down. So in order to say if that's the reason why crime is in that space, I don't think that would be a fair ask because the numbers are not the same. When you talk about what we're doing in that space, we have certainly been working with our federal, state, and local partners. One of the other things that I've also initiated is a gun tracking unit, which is very, very critical to us. And I think I shared with you earlier that we are getting additional resources from our federal partners to really assist us with our gun trafficking as well as the robbery suppression and armed carjacking. And we will continue to leverage those relationships to help us with driving down some of the crime. I think earlier during the summer, one of the other things that we're also doing is working with CSOSA and the U.S. Marshals and looking at some of our high gun offender warrants. And we are taking an effort to look at that list and going out and establishing an operation and apprehending some of those folks that are on that list. And we've done that twice. Just recently, I think we arrested over 18 individuals. 18 individuals. I think prior to that, I think it was a total of about 48. And we will continue to work in that space in place with our federal partners to really address some of these folks who are violent gun offenders, who have arrest warrants, who have not yet been apprehended. And I think that is one of our other significant focus. If we can apprehend some of those folks, that will help us in driving down some of this violent crime, especially with firearms, and continuing our efforts with ATF, DEA, and FBI in space.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yes, ma'am.
All these questions are great and all the answers and the plans are fantastic, right? But it's all limited by the resources that you have and that you need to get to. Regardless of your goals, regardless of the aspirations, it's going to get hampered if you don't get the additional 700 or 800 folks you need to get to that 4,200 number. So I'm going to circle back to the question that a lot of us have. What do you need to get to the 4,200? What is holding you back that we can have a say on?
I think that what you can do, well, thank you so much for that question. Yeah. Support the legislation for Act Now. We need you to really support us in that space. That is a unique space for us to be in. We will continue to do the recruiting, but I think we also need the tools and resources to do our job. And again, I've been in this space for like a few months, so y'all know I can't say everything I want to say. I don't know why y'all try to put me on the spot like that. I hear y'all questions. Y'all know I can't do that. But yes, sir.
I mean, the mayor just recently declared a state of emergency.
For youth, yes.
Yeah, and you know, I've lived in the area for like 20 some odd years, about the same amount of time you've been a
Yes,
police
sir.
person here, right? So my question to you is, what does that mean to you? And if it is a state of emergency, why not augment your PSAs
Mhm.
with National Guard regulars? With National Guard regulars.
So I don't have the authority to
Well, the mayor
even.
does, and you have the mayor here.
No, she doesn't.
Well, not when it comes to the National Guard. I know there have been several conversations around it, and again, I can't speak for the mayor. The mayor supports public safety 1000%, and I'm very happy to say that I believe, and it's my belief and my personal and professional belief, that we have one of the best mayors who have supported public safety across the United States. She continues to provide when we speak to her about different legislation, act now. Come on, somebody, act now. She has been very, very supportive, not just in that, and in other efforts in order to assist us with legislation specifically related to public safety.
All right, excellent questions. Thank you, Chief. We're going with the flow. Scott, you came in a little late and you didn't hear me talk about that. So I met with.
Not answered that.
So I am not going to say yes or no on a bill that hasn't had a hearing, that's not been marked up. We've talked about, it's tomorrow, but the way the legislative process works, and in this case, the mayor sent down a bill. Chief and I've met about it. We've talked about the various aspects of it. I've raised concerns. She's answered my questions. We keep going back and forth. Tomorrow, the public has a chance to weigh in. There may be more concerns. There may be more support. Then from there, the committee looks and decides if they want to adjust anything. And after that, they vote on it. And then it comes to the committee of the whole. Okay, so.
It's a process.
Exactly. Thank you, Ms. Matthews. So what I have said is I'm listening and I'm open to it. I'm participating in the hearing tomorrow. I've had a conversation with the chief about it. There's some aspects of it I think that are very valuable for Ward 1, and I've heard from you all. So keep that in mind. That said, there are a number of very important public safety measures before the council right now that we also need to be considering. So let's not put all of our hopes on one piece of legislation. Okay, we've got Brooke Pinto's bill. We've got the Robert White bill. I have 3 bills on public safety that we talked about tonight. So this is a all hands on deck situation. It's not just about the police. There are a lot of government agencies that are a part of this. The council plays a role as well, right? And we also want to make sure that the mayor and our law enforcement agencies can use the tools that they have already. And we're focused on that, right? Because passing bills and passing bills and passing bills is not going to get us out of the situation. We also have to focus on doing the work and making sure that all the agencies are following up. I know the chief can't say this, but I do think it's a problem that our forensics lab hasn't been accredited for several years. That's a problem for every case. I do think it's a problem that our US attorney is still declining 2/3 of every case, right? So let's talk about all the things. We'll talk about that bill tomorrow, but let's not just talk about that bill as the magic solution for everything going on right now, because that's not realistic. Ms. Gall, and then we got to get back to the question submitted, but you are certainly always welcome.
And this is because you did mention that you had some concerns about the act now, and I'm just only in that vein. I would like to have you tell us what are your concerns and what was your discussion that you had with the chief so that we can see if your concerns were alleviated. in order for us to make sure that we're going to take action on it?
Because I don't have it all in front of me, I don't want to speak off the top of my head because it's a pretty extensive bill, but I'm happy to have that conversation with you. And we'll have it tomorrow in the hearing, right? I'll be participating and asking questions as well. So, but I don't want to get it wrong because that wasn't what I was planning. I don't have that all in front of me tonight, but I am very focused on it. And I think there are aspects of it that I'm gonna, that right out the gate, I'm glad to support, right? But some of it just requires more discussion. That's true with every bill, every bill, right? That's how it works. If we just adopted every bill that came to us without any discussion or changes, we would not be doing a very good job as critical thinkers and as your representatives. So I hope that that is something folks value in their legislators. All right.
Remember one concern, as an example?
Hi, how are you? Well, I think we have talked about one, which is, what would the drug-free zones, and we got to talk about this in our meeting, what would the drug-free zones mean for all of the, people receiving human services? Right? So if we're clearing everybody out of that space for 5 days, will our social workers and et cetera lose track of their people? So that's something we just need to work through, right? I'm not worried about getting rid of the drug dealers. That's, excuse me, I'm answering a question and I'm telling you what my concern is.
You have to represent our concerns.
questions.
You have to represent our concerns.
Yeah.
And really, our
So-
concerns.
So, okay, I think I answered the question. All right, so let's go to,
We want you to vote yes on all 6.
Yeah.
The strongest
okay, I
possible
hear you. Thank
Forget the
you.
Process, people are dying out there.
Yeah.
You know, it's good, yeah.
Okay.
Open air drug market.
Not all of us get a police escort when we go to the store.
Do you? I don't.
You don't?
No,
They don't let me go to the store.
I know.
Okay, which one is realistic?
Okay, folks, I hear you. And as I said, I'm taking it seriously. But I also do not just put a rubber stamp on bills that come to me, period. Doesn't matter who sent them down, period. So let's move on. The hearing is tomorrow. Okay. So speaking of drug zones, you sure? You okay? Okay. Well, so Chief Kane talked about this a bit. So let's just see if there's anything more to add. So you talked, Chief Kane, about the special units like the Violent Crime Suppression Unit and their Narcotics Enforcement Unit. Are officers usually assigned to those units permanently or are they on rotation?
They actually have to go through an application process, an interview process.
Okay.
And so once they're assigned there, they are assigned there until they choose to go to another assignment, get promoted.
Thank you. So, Ward 1 residents have expressed concerns repeatedly about drug dealing and drug use and it being a huge issue that contributes to crime in their neighborhoods. Are there any plans to change the organizational structure of the narcotics unit so that any officer can make a drug arrest? Now, I feel like the chief spoke to this earlier. The question is, any officer can make a drug arrest. Okay. And then are there any other plan changes for drug investigations? No other plan changes. Okay.
We've arrested, like I said, this year, we have arrested almost 800 people for just narcotics. Interactions or violations, and we will continue in that same effort and same vein. As a matter of fact, I think a 2nd district commander just reported out earlier today, yesterday, as a matter of fact, about a significant amount of drugs, narcotics that was confiscated in a particular area in her district. And I think it was a total of US currency of about $84,000. Am I correct, ma'am? How much?
80,000.
Over 80,000, just over 80,000 in currency. And that was a significant arrest. So when you talk about the work that our Violent Crime Suppression Division team is doing, the work that our officers are doing, we continue to support them in that space of securing arrest, if you will, for narcotics violations.
So on that arrest warrant, this was members of the 2nd Patrol District, almost 147 pounds of marijuana, almost over 17 pounds of mushrooms, almost 85 pounds of edible products, and as she said, $80,597 in US currency, and that was just good police work.
Yes, thank you.
That's great. And it's good to hear because I think a lot of times people get discouraged thinking they have to wait for a special unit to come do this work, but this is proof that that's not the case. I'm gonna make this our last question just because it's almost 8 o'clock. So we're not gonna get to our fourth topic, but our third topic is around partnerships. A resident asked how you work with other jurisdictions in Maryland and Virginia when crimes are committed by people who live across DC's border. And we know in Ward 1, a lot of the people doing crimes here are coming in to do them, which really ticks me off. And I'm curious how you work on that.
I'll say a little bit before I lose my breath or my ability to talk, because you all know we have a hearing tomorrow.
Right.
Yes. Act now. Let me stop listening to you guys. But we have a very, very strong partnership with Prince George's County, Montgomery County. The folks on the other side of the 14th Street Bridge, when it comes to Arlington County, Alexandria County, even as far as Fairfax County, the collaboration between those city, state, local partnerships is very, very vital to the work that we do and also the work that they do. We have at one point, and we're still thinking about joining a task force with Prince George's County. When we have our traffic safety compliance checkpoints, we have other police agency that join us in that space, especially when you're talking about the borders of Maryland and the District of Columbia, or even Virginia and the District of Columbia. We will continue to strengthen those relationships because we're all facing the same type of crime. Chief Aziz over in Prince George's County is fighting the same fight that we're fighting here in the District of Columbia.
Thank you very much for that. So, if there's one thing you'd like, just as we wrap up, if there's one thing you'd like Ward 1 residents to walk away knowing today, what would it be?
That you have a very dedicated group of men and women, police officers, commanders, assistant chiefs in your ward who are working very diligently to fight crime. And not just fight crime based on our numbers and our data, but also gathering information from each one of you that sit in this room who have shared information with us. We value that relationship, which is why it was very important to me to have the team conduct community walks or public safety walks, because we need to hear from you. Sometimes we get disconnected, right? We are disconnected because we're so busy doing other things, but it's really, really important for us to make sure that we're partnering with you in your communities and in your residents. And that's why it's important to me every morning at 8:30, I have the command staff briefing out on their crime in their district every single morning so that I can also have an idea of what's happening in your spaces and places, so that when I have the opportunity to come out of the office and to conduct some of these safety walks with you all, it won't be a foreign language for me, because it matters to me what happens in your district. When I tell you that I have a lot of sleepless nights, and I don't have sleepless nights because I'm just up watching television. I have sleepless nights because I'm looking at crime almost every single hour on the hour. And I am truly blessed to have the team that we have at the Metropolitan Police Department who are fighting this fight with you. We are fighting this fight. We will stay dedicated. We will stay committed. And I will add by saying the one thing, if there's one thing that I need you to do tomorrow, is act now. God bless you.
Okay, Chief. One resident asked us, how can the community best help MPD with public safety? And is there one thing you've heard tonight that has resonated with you and will influence your thinking going forward?
So I'm going to take that question. In that space, what we have heard tonight from you all, we are out there with you, so we have heard it before, right? We know, we hear you say that you are afraid. That does not fall on deaf ears, right? We know that there are some issues that we need to address, and we're addressing them. So what I want you to know that we heard tonight, what your team heard tonight, is what we've been saying. You need us to be proactive in that space. You need us to be deliberate in that space. You need us to be thoughtful in that space. You need us to be present in the crime fighting space. And that is what we do. And we do it every day, hearing your voices in our ear, particularly as district commanders. I can tell you that your commanders come in every morning looking as if they fought a grizzly bear the day before because they are fighting the crime. Their teams, they are fighting the crime. So what I want you to know is that we hear you, we stand with you, and we will not stop working until you, each and every one of you, feel safe in your community and know that you can go out at night and walk down the street. And if that means us, and if
Smart with you every time you go there.
you got my information, I'm expecting to hear from you, and I'm gonna talk to you in 1 second. Okay, so in that, and we will work with every partner agency that we have to make sure that that comes to fruition. You all have our numbers. We'll pass them out again. We'll be here for a minute to talk to you afterwards. But know that this partnership between you and us is what we need to be successful, okay? All right, good night.
Thanks, Chief. So thanks, everybody, for being here tonight. We'll stick around if you have any more questions. And I hope folks will join me at Brienne on Your Block, December 18th. Our coffee walk. The next one is ANC 1E in December, and MPD's public safety walks.